And what I'd like for you to do is whatever like I'm typing, I think it would be great for you to type that in as well. And we're just gonna recap everything in our notes, but in kind of this nice visual way to help us remember everything and keep it straight. So we've been talking about fingerprint classification, and there's 3 potential categories, right? Like it could be an arch, it could be a loop, or it could be a whirl. And these percentages up here just reflect the FBI percentages that we talked about, 5% on average. And again, this is just USA data, not necessarily worldwide, but it's a pretty large sample size, so it would be very close. A small percentage are arches, many, more than half are loops, and then somewhere in the middle, you've got your whirls. So I'm gonna go to a text box, and I honestly don't know how big I want this, but I'm gonna select 12. I would recommend picking a different color besides black, just so it stands out on your chart. My favorite colors are navy blue and purple, so those are kind of the ones that I jump to. And I'm going to click into this characteristic box, and I also wanna go up to the top and add in 2 bullet points. Because we're going to have kind of 2 things that apply to this arch category. The most important one, I'm going to make bold, and we're going to say that there are 0 deltas. And it's so important that there are 0 deltas that I want that written first. I also don't want it in Times New Roman. So I'm just going to switch that. I think it'll be easier to see. Let's also zoom in so it's easier for you to see at home. Is that better? Okay, so 0 deltas, clicking enter, because the other thing we talked about with arches is that the ridges, the ridge lines will, apparently that's 2 words, will enter and exit from these, from different sides. And just to get that in my box, I'm gonna drag that text box over here. And those are kind of my big takeaways. Again, I can't stress how important the deltas are. So make sure that you have that kind of designated as something important to keep in mind. Adding a new text box, I'm going to do the same thing over here. But now when we talk about loops, let's give ourselves some bullet points here. This one we said there was 1 delta. I want that bold. And in the case of loops, our ridge lines, what? Why did that change? There we go. Ridge lines will enter and exit from the same side. And again, I'm going to now drag this to fill the box. And I'm just kind of emphasizing the fact that these enter and exit from the same side, just to make it different from over here. So I'm going to pat back over and make sure that that really stands out. So no deltas, 1 delta. The ridge lines come in and out on different sides of the print. In the loops, they're going to come in and out on the same side of the print. And so one last text box right here. And I need a bullet point. So now we have how many deltas? 2 deltas. I just realized that I left this on bold. And really, I just want the delta idea to be bold. So here, we're going to have kind of your classic bullseye pattern. And that should give us kind of our general characteristics for arches, loops, and whirls. So once you get that typed in, I no longer need my text box. Now I want to draw. We're going to have some fun. You can pick whichever color you'd like. I think I'll just stick with purple. If you don't like these options that pre-populate, go down to the palette and that will give you a lot more color options. All right, so let me erase that. little smidge. All right, so an arch, we have two options. So again, the ridge lines enter and exit from different sides. So I'm going to draw it comes in from one side, arches up, and exits on the other side. And a tented one was a little bit steeper. So it came in on one side, went up, came back and exited on the other side. And don't forget, it had some sort of vertical component in there as well. For my loops, it could come in and out from the same side, and it doesn't necessarily matter which side, but it kind of comes in and circles back out. It might loop back onto itself, or it might come in and kind of exit as separate. It won't like intersect at all. All right, the whorls, the plain one was you had this kind of concentric pattern for both the plane and the pocket. The double loop had one loop coming in from one side, and then you also had another one kind of looping in underneath it. That's hideous. I hope yours look better than mine. I'm erasing it. I'm gonna try that one again. So I'm gonna do my big one first so I know what confines I'm working with. So you have one that kind of arches in and one kind of nested within it. Still doesn't look great, but we get the idea. And then the accidental one is just kind of, this is your junk drawer, remember, of kind of a general shape. And you might be thinking like, wait a second, Mrs. Bowman, you went on and on forever talking about how important the deltas are, and it's not necessarily the shape of that core pattern. And you're right. I just wanted to sketch those out. And now I'm going to go back over here and pick a new color. So let's go with, gosh, I don't even know. Purple, and we'll do green, gator green. And I'm now going to add in my deltas. So I'm going to, whoops. Get rid of that. I need to switch to my green. All right, so deltas I'm highlighting in green. And then there are no deltas to draw in with my arches. With the loops, we do have one. And so I'm going to draw that in here. So this is going to be the presence of my delta. You kind of have like the river that goes here and then it separates out. And that's forcing these ridge lines to change their direction and loop back on themselves. So that is my delta. Whorls are going to have two deltas each. So I'm going to have a plain whorl, and remember this kind of counts. Your deltas are going to be closer up by the plain whorl, where the pocket whorl, it's going to hover a little bit higher than your deltas. The double loop whorls will also still have two deltas, and even though the accidental is kind of crazy, it's in there. And then finally, I'm going to pick a third color. We're really getting crazy here. And I'm going to draw in that imaginary tangent line here, connecting those two deltas. And then, whoops, undo. If you need to undo, I've just been hitting Control Z. There's also like an undo button up at the top next to where you can zoom. So this one, I'm going to draw my imaginary tangent line connecting those two deltas. And notice the space between that imaginary line and my pocket delta. Versus the plain one, that center core in purple intersects that imaginary pink line. So in fingerprints, we're not going to have those lines necessarily. We won't have these imaginary tangent lines. So you really, this is part of the analysis portion when you're classifying a fingerprint. You have to, and there, it's not a bad idea to trace it out and draw it in and see if it actually overlaps, because some of them are tough. They're tough to decipher. They're not easy. So here is a nice little flow chart. It looks super messy, but I do hope that it's helpful for you to kind of see everything that we went through on the notes.